I'll play some music. All right. Hear the cowbell? All right. All right. That's I just used that last week too as like an intro song. That's Biker Bar Brawl from the first album. Just kind of cool. I think it's a cool like podcast. It's an instrumental, so it's cool for like podcast background and stuff like that. And then I got 747, which is more of a trippy mellow. Like this one I use sometimes. You guys can let me know what you think. But I got this one I use for something more mellow. Prepare yourself for the fantabulous night flights of Dave Blair. 2 a.m. I'm going to be talking to you about some sexy things with my low deep voice and this cool jazzy background music. Good for, right? Perfect for something like that. Using my deep, very wet kind of voice right up on the microphone. Anyway, that's a cool one, right? In that same album, one's a little bit of a rocker, 2 instrumentals on that album. Just stuff I was fooling around like. I'm like, put it on the album. It's kind of cool. And it's good, perfect for like background music for different shows and stuff. And notice for you guys that are musicians and stuff, Proximity Effect. Anybody know what Proximity Effect is? Be a cool band name. Welcome to the stage, Proximity Effect. Sounds like an 80s band name or something. But what it is when you get closer to the mic, it gives you more bottom end. It's the way, it has to do with the way the pickup pattern is. So when you're, for most mics, most what they call omnidirectional mics, hypercardioid mics. So you have mics that pick up just right what's in front of it, and when you go to the side, you can hardly hear it, and that's done for a reason, so that it doesn't pick up all sorts of background noise. Then they have omnidirectional mics. A lot of people don't know this in studios, is that if you don't want to have the proximity effect, if you have a mic that does omni, which means it picks it up from all sides, you actually switch there and you won't get that proximity effect because it has to do with the polar pattern. But anyway, if you want that deep voice that the radio talk show, you just go right up on the mic and you get that deep nice voice. And this SM7 is really good for that. There's a few mics that are good for that. I like, I have an SM7 and it actually works pretty good for talking. I used it some vocals on my record too. But I actually depending on the thing, this is good for if you want something to cut through, because it's got a little bit of a nice mid-range thing. But then I also have a Perlman TM1, which is more like a a smoother, bigger, round sounding mic like you might hear Sinatra use. I like that sound. That's what I used on Gonna Do, and it kind of gets that. I think that's what I used on Gonna Do. Yeah, I'm pretty sure because it gives it that nice bottom as well. What did I want to talk about? I had no idea what I wanted to talk about today, and then I just wrote some cool things down that I've been talking about the last few weeks. And I'm like, oh, well, we didn't finish talking about this, that, and the other thing. So, I don't know, what do I want to start with? Oh, Tony Iommi. Guitar player, obviously, if you're a guitar player, is the guitar player from Black Sabbath. So, he recently did, if you want to check it out, he doesn't give interviews a lot. He did give an interview about a month ago with Eddie Trunk. You know, Eddie Trunk has a couple of shows on Sirius XM Radio, one on Hair Nation. And he hates that name because it associates all that music, great music in the 80s with, like, just, it undermines it, saying it's just hair music and it was just about the videos and the look. And no, there's some great music, especially in the early 80s. Yeah, once it got to the late 80s, you had bands that were more about their hair than it was about the music. But, I mean, they're discounting Van Halen and Iron Maiden and Rush and AC/DC and, I mean, a lot of great music in the 80s. You know, and even bands that came, you know, I mean, Triumph, all the early 80s stuff. And then you had stuff that came a little bit later, that in the late 80s, that was still pretty good. And then you had, you know, bands like Alice in Chains. Alice in Chains was starting to be popular, I think, towards the late 80s. Then you had bands like King's X and even Guns N' Roses. You know, they're still highly regarded, and they were late 80s band. They came out in, what's 87, 88? But they were very different. It was interesting how they fit in the scheme of things, because Guns N' Roses did not fit in the hair metal. I mean, they kind of had the look a little bit. They tried to tease their hair and everything, but basically they were more in the harkness of like AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, old school 70s rock, basically, with just a little LA kind of twist on it. But they definitely weren't in the same bucket as, let's say, Warrant, Skid Row, Poison, those pop. I wouldn't even venture to call them metal. Guns N' Roses is, you know, more like I said, AC/DC, even like Def Leppard, some of the earlier, which is just straight rock, good stuff. But they fit weird because almost every band that was good in the early 80s, they had to kind of change their image, or everything new that came out that was a derivative of, let's say, Van Halen, didn't have all the great qualities that Van Halen had. But they had the big hair and they had the look like a Poison. I mean, you know, Poison or Skid Row or Warrant, they didn't have, you know, they didn't have as much talent as Eddie Van Halen or any of those early 80s bands. Rush, you know, had in their little pinky, but, you know, but then you have a band that comes in that kind of throws that all under the bus, like Guns N' Roses, which, like, they didn't do any of the typical. They were more grungy, but they weren't grunge. So how do they fit in there? I don't know. They were just a great band that did what they did really well. I don't know. Just my thought. That's my point. Let me turn on this unified chat so I can see if people chatting. But anyway, Tony Iommi did a cool interview with Eddie Trunk. I don't know, it was about a month ago. But Eddie Trunk, you could get his podcast on multiple platforms and see all the different. He's got lots of great interviews, like race of people. So find the people that you like and listen to the interviews. And he's a good interviewer. He's you know, he really gets down. He talks about the music and less about, you know, all the other stuff that a lot of interviewers talk about. But, so check that out, because, you know, Tony Iommi doesn't really do interviews that much, and he talks about one interesting that Tony Iommi, I can't speak. It's a hard name to say. From Black Sabbath, he in his interview with Eddie Trunk, Eddie asked him if he's writing any new music, and he's like, I'm always writing. With a little English accent I'm trying. So he says, I'm always writing. He's like, I got tapes and hundreds and unlimited ideas of stuff that I've recorded. And he talked, you know, and then he was like, oh, do you think about you now with COVID and everything, he doesn't, you know, have that much opportunity to work with anybody. He doesn't have people coming over or anything. But he has people that he's talked about, oh, maybe we'll do something with this guy and that guy. So who knows? Maybe we'll see some kind of Tony Iommi solo record or instrumental record or something where he works with somebody else. There's really not that much that he's done outside of Black Sabbath, that I could think of. And that would be interesting to hear him collaborate with somebody that, I'd love to see another Black Sabbath record. while Ozzy is still alive. I don't think that's probably never going to happen, but the album 13 was pretty cool, actually. I know that another thing, I don't know if you guys know, Fiona Apple. Go over Black Sabbath to Fiona Apple, but I still dig Fiona Apple. Had some really cool music in the 90s. She has a new album out called Bolt Cutter, which is much more bare bones than what you hear on the big album that had Criminal and all that stuff on it. But it's pretty, if you dig Fiona Apple, you might want to go check it out on YouTube. I listened to a few tracks. There's 2 or 3 tracks that I'm like, that's kind of cool. My favorite thing is still the stuff that she did with Criminal. Just it was the piano, the vocal, the writing, just a killer record, man. Unique for that time too. She just didn't give a crap what the industry was doing, and she wasn't really part of that world. She's always been a little bit off, like, I'm just going to do my thing, and it just happened to become popular, whereas some people are chasing fame, and usually their material shows it. Steve Perry, singer from Journey, obviously. I heard just some little talk about Neil Sean, the guitar. Now, Journey's gone through some issues. They have American Idol guy, who was a former bass player for them. What's his name? He was always like, good singing dog. Anyway, Jackson. Not J.J. Jackson. J.J. Jackson. There's a lot of Jacksons. Obviously, Michael Jackson and all the Jackson family. J.J. Jackson was the MTV VJ. And then you have Jesse Jackson, who was the guy who ran for president. And now we're talking about Jackson, the guy from American Idol, who is now also back in Journey as the bass player. And they replaced Steve Smith with a different drummer. Off the top of my head, I can't remember his name. But it's a different... Steve Smith is world-class drummer. People don't realize Steve Smith, the Journey drummer, is also a world-renowned jazz drummer. And if you ever get the chance to see him in anything, especially Vital Information, which is his own band, it's just phenomenal. You could just watch him play and play and play. But he doesn't even need a band. I could watch him play drums for 3 hours. And you don't get that from Journey. If you're a drummer and you listen to Journey, you can say, yes, he's got some cool parts that he came up with. But he's actually a world-class... He's up there with Dave Weckl and Patitucci. Not Patitucci's a bass player, but those types of... that whole rung of Chicoria top class musicians. And you got but anyway, so I just heard that Neil Sean had kind of said something to Steve Perry, like, they're in the studio, he's welcome to come down. What does that mean? Of course, the rumor mill is going to be like, is he going to do a record with Steve Perry? And that would be a big deal. I don't know. Steve Perry put that solo record out about a year ago. I bought it. Cool, definitely cool. It's not Journey. But if you're a Steve Perry fan and you haven't heard anything from him for 20 years, you should buy the record and you get to hear his voice. And his voice, he's gotten older and he's lost a little range and he's a little gravelly. But even the last couple of Journey albums, he was a little gravelly, which goes back to discussions about vocal technique, because Steve Perry is actually a really interesting study in vocal progression, because you could see. From the first album, his voice has this pure, clear sound, and each record you start seeing a little bit of nasality come in, a little bit of throat, a little bit of pushing, and and then he got then it gets from clear, pure, beautiful tenor, first tenor to Sherry, he's like screaming, still with a beautiful voice, but he's kind of yelling and screaming and throaty, and then the last, he's still, he always has a great voice, but it sound, you could hear the pushing and the thing later on. And the last album, still beautiful voice, but you could hear it doesn't have the youth. And I've heard a lot of people talk to me about, well, when you're older, you lose your voice, you lose your... That's BS. It's BS. Pavarotti was kicking butt into his 60s, and so was Placido Domingo. They had good training, and actually Pavarotti isn't the best example, because he treated his body like crap. He would eat like crap. I think he drank, but he had very good vocal technique for the most part. More than most rock guys. But then you got a guy like Jeff Tate from Queensryche, and he still sings high D's live, high E flats live, and he's in his late 50s. So it's more about your vocal technique and also your physical conditioning. I know for me, I could you're singing for 3 hours straight, and then at the end, you have songs at the end of the night that are high B's, high C's. You're just out of breath by that time, so it's just harder to do everything. So that's where your physical conditioning, running, just being healthy in general, getting good sleep, being eating well, and drinking a lot of water, so that at the end of the night, 3 in the morning, you can hit the same note you can at the beginning of the night, and then 3 or 4 nights in a row. It's tough, to be able to be consistent vocally, but vocal technique. I help a lot of people a lot of times when they start asking about this stuff, and I'm like, dude, you got to start with good vocal technique, because I see people, they sound phenomenal one time, and then another time they're iffy, and it's like, I mean, we all have issues, and sometimes it's mental, sometimes it's physical, and we don't always do and nobody does their best perfect performance every time. But if you have technique, at least it's going to always be there. You're not going to be phenomenal one night and suck another. You might be phenomenal one night and another, because you're just not there mentally or energy-wise, or you don't feel good, or you're tired, or you're just out of breath, or it's the 4th night in a row and you're burnt. But if you have good vocal technique, the issues won't be your voice. You have to do 4 nights in a row, you won't have a sore throat. I've worked with people that, at the end of the night, they're like, oh, I got a show tomorrow, I know how I'm going to sing. I'm like, because you're banging the crap out of your voice all night long, pushing, even if it sounds good, I could tell that what you're doing is going to make you have a sore throat tomorrow, and that's no way to be consistent. You're doing stuff tonight that's going to make you sound like crap later in the night or tomorrow. But anyway, that's my rant on vocal training. Have solid vocal training, and take care of your body, and have voice being there isn't going to be much of an issue. Of course, there's always problems. I've had times when I had to sing sick, with the flu, dizzy, with a fever, diarrhea. I hate to say it, but you keep it real. Just, you have all sorts of physical problems, and guess what? You can't cancel a show. You can't be like, you have a whole band booked. You have a club that's paying you good money, or at least money, and you can't just be, they got hundreds of people in their club, and they're expecting. You can't be like, oh, I don't feel good, I got a fever, I can't do the show tonight. No, that's just not an option. You feel sick, you got a sore throat, unless you're really, really, really sick. And to be honest, and I've been really sick. I've had fever, swollen glands. I still did the show, still sang. Maybe I didn't sing the highest. I skipped the highest, hardest song if I, had a bad flu. But I always made sure I've never canceled a show in my life because of being sick. One time, and there's a little caveat to there. One time I had really bad stomach. I'll keep it not gross, but just really bad stomach problems, where I was this close to having to cancel the. I thought about, like, I don't know if I could do this show tonight. And there was a snowstorm that was, on the radio said there might be a snowstorm, and the rest of the band thought that, hey, maybe we should cancel the show, and it would have looked bad for the agent. It was kind of a big show. It was something up the Tropicana in Atlantic City. It was kind of a good big paying show. It was a big thing. Celebrities are going to be there, so I didn't want to cancel it. And normally I would have be like, you guys are doing this. This is booked, and if it's a snowstorm, there's a snowstorm. So what? We'll get a room for the night, and we'll come back the next day. But because I had this stomach issue, I was like, okay, cancel it, because I was not up to going out. So, but technically, it wasn't me who canceled the show. So, by that, with that caveat, I could say I've never canceled a show in my life because I wasn't feeling up to doing the show. The only time I've ever canceled a show is because maybe there was a screw up, like a double booking. And that, I don't think that's ever been my fault. But it's been times when, let's say, one agent booked me on the night and some other person booked me on the same night, and I never confirmed, but they had me down. I had one time that I was opening up. I don't know if you guys from Jersey or East Coast know Steppin' Out magazine. So Steppin' Out magazine is a magazine that, is all the bands that are playing in North Central Jersey. They have, all the big clubs, all the A clubs and everything. They have, all the bands in there playing. So I'm just sitting at home some Friday night, and I'm flipping through the Steppin' Out magazine, and there's a big ad that I'm playing that night at this club. Just happened to be lucky that I happened to stumble across it. And so I'm like, I'm not playing here to this night, but it says I am, and it was that night. So I called up the club. I'm like, I'm not. You have me in Stepping Out magazine, with a big ad saying that I'm playing there tonight, and I'm not. My guitar player, because I had, it was me and I had another guitar player at that time. He was like on vacation or something. He was like out of the state, so there's no way we could have even done it on the fly. I think that was what happened. Is I think that was a date they offered us, and then we turned it down or changed it like 2 months before. But they, bookers are notorious for screwing up the calendars. That's why sometimes you got to double and triple book certain places. And to this day, I still get places where we show up, and then they're like, "Oh, you're not on tonight." I'm like, "Yeah, we are. We confirmed. I have the emails, everything." "Oh, wait, with the other manager booked you, and then I did." What do you mean? How do you know how to run a business? You're running a big restaurant, hundreds of patrons, but you have 2 or 3 different people booking the acts, and you're not coordinating. What does it take? Take a piece of paper or a calendar, hang it up on the refrigerator in the back of your restaurant, and put what bands are there, so that even if you have 3 people booking, you don't double book. How hard is that? But over the years, so many times, I've had times when we spent 2 hours setting up a whole sound system, lights, drum kit, cage, all sorts of stuff. We're ready to, and then we're all set up, and then what happens is you look in the back of the club, and there's a couple of guys that you don't know walking in with guitar cases. Then you're like, oh shit, somebody done screwed up the date. And some of the times it's that, some of the times you play and they send the other guys home, and other times they're like, oh no, the owner said he booked these guys, and it helps. I hate to have to double babysit and double triple check all these things, but it's sometimes you have to, or else you drive all the way out there, set up, and then they're like, oh, you're not here on tonight. I'm like, yes we are. But anyway, that happens. So that's always interesting. All the glamour of of the music business, whatever. I'm still waiting to find that. It's usually more like lugging heavy equipment and sweating, and then getting screwed over for money. Just like I think AC/DC had it right. Getting robbed, getting took. It's a long way to the top. It's harder than it looks. It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. That's more accurate. And Spinal Tap, that's more accurate. There's not a lot of. The best part is when you're on stage kicking ass, and people are like in the audience, rocking out. The rest of it is pretty much sucks, And sometimes you get a cool gig where they feed you cool food on, that sort of thing. So that's cool. And then of course the camaraderie of your musician friends and stuff. But aside, the music is what's the fun part, not all the other stuff. Usually, maybe in the 70s and 80s there was all sorts of parties and fun and big money. But now, I don't know, there's people who are like, I see these kids, and it's like it seems like they're doing it because they take lessons for a year or whatever, and they want to put a record out, and they think they're going to be the next whatever big star. I'm like, dude, if you're doing this to be famous, you're barking up the wrong tree, because if that's their only motivation, you're gonna, and I see it, they work really hard at it for a couple of years, they promote on social media, they put an album out, and then they realize that 5 people bought their album after all that work, and then they get disheartened. I'm like, no, that's not, you gotta go in it with being, I love music, I'm gonna do it no matter what, till the idea, guys, because it's the only thing I really love doing, the only thing that makes me happy. And if other people listen to it, great. But if not, I'll still be 80 years old singing on the subway platform just because I want to sing, or because I wrote a cool song. It's got to come from the music in the first part. And then if you're going to do it, and you can spend all that time and effort and money and energy and heart and soul and blood, sweat and tears into something, hey, well, might as well have other people listen to it, because some people, you have people come up and say, hey, that's pretty cool, I'd like to hear more. Great. Sometimes my voice activated Google seems to pop up, thinks I'm talking to it even when I'm not. But anyway, that's the most important thing I'm gonna say today. Is that's where it's got to come from, man. I see too many people that just they want to have success. I'm like, dude, I like what Dave Grohl said. He said something along the lines like, dude, we started, as just a bunch of guys that sucked, having fun in a garage, and we just kept playing and sucking and playing and sucking, and I just love the fact that, hey, I'm here in a club and there's people watching me and I'm gonna bang the crap out of the drums and they're gonna say, damn, that guy played the crap out of those drums. And then and it's like, hey, that's a win for me. Record or no record, that's a win for me. That's what I, started doing this for. It's like, if you come and you do some, music, and you put your heart and soul into it, and you have fun with your friends, and you play some cool music, and some people dig it, whether it's 2 people, if 2 billion people, it's a win. If your heart's in the right place, that's the attitude. I think people get frustrated into, like, how long is it going to take before I could make $100,000 in this business or whatever. I'm like, it's the wrong question. I mean, if you can. I mean, I've made lots of money in this business, not necessarily with originals or, some money with originals and stuff, some albums and stuff, shows. But for the most part, it's more session work, teaching, and I made a lot of money doing cover acts, weddings, clubs, just playing rock, ZZ Top songs in clubs and stuff, pretty much every weekend. Until COVID, I was playing 1 to 3 times a week, every week. For probably since 2002, and then before that, even I still did hires. I was hired in multiple different bands. So since the 90s, since about 94, I've been in one band or another pretty consistently. I think there was one few months that I wasn't in a band, and then I just went to all my friends' bands and sat in because I needed to get out and play. But for the most part, I've been playing. Once in a while you have a weekend off, which I'm thrilled. I don't, once in a while it's nice to have a weekend off. I mean, now with COVID, I have every weekend off. But it's really, for the most part, I've been playing on the average 1 to 2 times a week, every week for 10 years. So average of probably 90 shows a year. Some years 120 shows, some years 75 shows. And I never really push it. If we have some opportunities to do more stuff, great. If things slow down, great. I get to work out more and write and record. That's why sometimes it's hard to, it's a long time. But the first album was in 2010. The next one, I think it was 2013. And then I haven't put anything out since. But I've been gigging constantly, working on, so it's like, well, I could stop gigging and making money that way and just focus on the original stuff. But the gigging, I think, keeps you improving as a performer. So I think that's important. So there's got to be a balance. Now with COVID, I'm working more on practicing and working on new songs and just doing the live streams on Saturdays. Every Saturday, 9:30, live stream right here. We do originals, covers, make requests, whatever. But it's interesting because now I'm kind of just working on, just for that live stream, I'm like, oh, this week I'm going to learn this new tune because I don't want to do the same stuff every live stream. Some of it's the same, but every week I like to try add like 1 or 2 new tunes. I'm working on some Robert Palmer stuff. I'm working on some Golden Earring stuff. A little bit of everything. Some more Bad Company. Just to try different things with my voice and with the guitar. And that's kind of cool. So that when we come back out after, we gigging again, I'll have a bunch of new material. And I've also been practicing more. When I'm gigging, it's like I'm just too tired. I warm up before the gig, do the gig, do maybe 2 shows, maybe 3 shows that week. And that's most of the singing I'm doing. Maybe 1 day a week I'll get to practice to learn some new stuff. And the rest of the days I'm just too tired to practice. And practicing tired makes you worse because you start pushing and struggling, and it actually makes you worse, not better. At least with voice, with vocals. Guitar, you could kind of be really tired and on the couch and just kind of, because it doesn't take as much energy. But vocals, if you're tired and you worked a 12-hour day or whatever, and then you go to practice, you're just going to be pushing on your voice, and you're probably not helping yourself. So, but now with the COVID, I'm not gigging as much. I'm actually practicing more. I'm practicing an hour or 2 a day on just voice, and maybe an hour a day on guitar. So I think that's, I'm trying new things with my voice and different types of material and different ways. I'm doing some of the low stuff and the high stuff, and feel things, the vocals. So that's interesting. And I'm also working on just playing, trying to get better. And then I'm also writing little things. So I think around this time next year, I'll at least be pretty well on my way to the next, recording a new album. I record pretty quick. It's just writing where I really dig that, I have a million ideas in the iTunes. And I just recorded a few of them, new ones last week. So I got a million ideas in the iTunes, and I don't know, if you guys want, I could play a couple just with their little snippets of melodies, but that's how it starts. But then I'm going to, so but next year I'll be recording some new originals. I'm also working on, which is a love-hate relationship with the social media stuff. Even stuff like this. This is fun, but it's, to talk about music, and it helps get people, building what they call a community or whatever. I've had to learn the whole social media thing because, it's just impossible to be like, I'm just going to work on music and then people will find it. It just doesn't work that way. And I tell all these kids that I know dozens of kids and bands and stuff that are doing things and trying to get a following or whatever. It's like, you got to understand the marketing and the social media part, which as a musician, I would rather have somebody else do it and I could focus on just making the music, doing the shows. But it just, you have to know how to do promotion because you got to get yourself out to people who never heard of you and bring them into your world. And if that's a Facebook ad or a live stream and people chatting with you, you got to do all that. It's part of, the whole thing. So, it takes a certain amount of time and effort. So it's a love-hate relationship because it's great when I see a new person on the chat that I've never heard and they're from another state or another country and they're like, oh, I just started getting into your stuff and I have a request. I love how you sing this. Could you also sing that? It's like this person is from France or this person is from North Dakota or wherever. And I never heard them before, but I, through marketing and stuff, they found my stuff and it's a good fit. So that's how you build, that organic, and that's really super cool. But at the same time, all the effort and time to do the social media, computer fun stuff and creating videos or ads to promote stuff, takes away. I'd rather spend that time writing a new album, but, if I put out a new album and only 50 people buy it, it's not, it's like if a tree falls in the forest, does anybody hear it, whatever that quote is. Does it make a sound? So, and I already, but in the meantime, I'm just working on getting better. I think that's something every musician should always do. Like, you should be better this week than you were last week. You should be better next month than last month. You should be better next year. So I'm always trying to get better. So even if I did if I sing an original song off of the first two albums now live, I see somebody chime in here. Robert Patrizio. I hope to be in a band one day. How do you go about joining one, forming one? Good. Yeah, it's an excellent question. So, it depends where you're at, what level you're at. Things have changed recently. When I was a kid, it was more you got your friends from high school and you got in the garage and you jammed and stuff. These days, with the good thing is with the internet, it's easy to find people. Back in the 90s, we had like music magazines in LA. They had different ones, and then in New Jersey, New York, they had a thing called the Aquarium and the EC Rocker, which was actually the same one, but they changed the name depending on the decade. But that was how you found different people. So first, I think you got to figure out what you are, what you want to do. And it could just be like, hey, I just want to hang out with some people and jam just to get used to playing in the band. And if you want to do that, Craigslist is a great way to do that. And there's some other sites. I think Craigslist is where most people go and just put an ad, say, I'm a guitar player, been playing X amount of years, I dig this kind of music, and I'm looking to do what? I'm looking for a drummer that we can hang out in garage and jam. Or maybe you're looking for something more serious, like you want to join a band that's gigging. Depending on what level you're at, if you're good enough, then go for it. Audition for bands they're gigging. I don't know what level you're at. If you've never been in a band before, maybe at first you just want to. You can even do open mics. Open mics are another great way to find musicians. So go up to an open mic. Find, if you play, let's say you play just guitar or whatever. Go to an open mic and see what singers are there and say, hey, I see you're a singer. I play guitar. Maybe next time I could play for you and you could sing. Because there's a million singers that don't play guitar or don't play an instrument, would love to have a guitar player to co-write with, to do open mics with. And who knows, from there, you start booking at a coffee shop and getting paid some money to do some covers and originals. And then from there, maybe you meet a bass player or meet a drummer at the open mic or on Craigslist and say, well, now we have a little band. Now we need a keyboard player, a bass, it's, don't be stuck with one thing. Find the right people that are like-minded and are serious and not goofing around, or at least as serious as you are. If you want to goof around, then find people that want to goof around, and just hang out in the living room and jam. if you want to find a band that makes money, then that's a whole nother track. Because if you want to be like, if your goal is to be the session guy that gets like, I mean, I get hired, I get calls. Well, when there wasn't COVID, I got calls constantly, more than I could take, more offers than I could accept for bands that their guitar player was sick or their guitar player left, and they still have all these gigs on the books, and they need somebody to come right in. So, I mean, I have a little bit of musical training, so I could learn 30. I remember one time I got a call. I had a gig on Thursday. I had a gig on Thursday, and I got a call on Wednesday from a guy I think his mom was in the hospital on her deathbed, a friend of mine, and he's like, dude, I got a gig Friday and Saturday. Can you do the gig? And I looked at the set list. I knew like, out of 40 songs, I knew like 2. So I'm like, I got a gig tomorrow, so I don't have time to learn the songs for Friday. I'll do it for Saturday. So basically, on Friday night, 8 o'clock, I just went through the set list on YouTube, charted all the stuff out, or memorized, learned all the tunes, put it in my little iPad, did the gig Saturday, and did like 40 tunes that I did not, I just learned the night before. I got by. I get calls like that all the time where I fill in for people, and usually they want me to be in the band because it's like, oh, this guy never rehearsed with us, and he learned all the tunes in a week or a day or whatever. So, if you're professional, I think if you want to make money, it's not hard, especially if you can play and sing. It's not hard in the sense of course, you have to have the musical ability. Let's say it's covers, you got to play those songs. Let's say if it's a guitar, the lead and the rhythm. You got to be able to play that stuff. Obviously good, but you don't have to be John Petrucci unless it's the Dream Theater cover band. But bands want people that it's you got to treat it seriously, like a business. If you want to do it at that level, if you want to be paid money, you got to treat it like a profession. You have to be as seriously as the guy who's working at a bank, saying, he does. If the guy is working at a bank or working on Wall Street, he doesn't. If he's supposed to be there at 9, he doesn't stroll in at 9:30. You wouldn't do that at your day job, right? Why would you do that at a gig? The band is there waiting, and they got to go on soon, and you have it, and they're stressed out because you still haven't shown up. Or you come to rehearsal, and we say, oh, these are the 5 songs we're going to do in rehearsal, and you didn't learn them. Now they just drove. They're taking time away from their family, spending money on rehearsal space, and you show up and you don't know the tunes. That's going to piss people off. They're not going to hire you anymore. You got to be, just basic professionalism and basic good get along with people. Like, don't start fights. I've had people that were really talented that got fired because they just were argumentative or difficult or opportunistic. Like, oh, I know, I had one guy that, he knew we needed him for this gig. Like, or at the last minute, the one guy dropped out and it was an important gig. He knew we needed this. So then he's like, well, I'm not going to do it unless you pay me this much money and you give me 4 more gigs. He was trying to take advantage. And the person who was the band leader at the time just got pissed off and was like, you know what? I have you on this year. I have you 7 more gigs. I'm not booking you for this weekend, and I'm taking you off those 7 gigs. And I had 20 more that I was going to give you. I'm not going to give you those. Don't call me anymore. Click. So don't, nobody wants to deal with the bullshit. Like, be professional. Show up on time. Be prepared. Just be learn your stuff. It's not rocket science, but I get calls constantly where like people are frustrated. Oh, my guitar player doesn't learn the material, or he's got an attitude, or he doesn't show up on time, or he's unreliable. We book him, and then the last minute he cancels. But it's not. Just don't be think of yourself as these people are trying to run a business, and if you could be and Phil X said the same type of thing. He's a guitar player from Bon Jovi, and he said the same type of thing. The way he phrased it was like, hey, these guys are trying to have so many things they got to deal with. They got to deal with the money. They got to deal with the bookings. They got to deal with the band. They got to deal with, the promoters, blah, blah, blah. And if you come in and you're easy to get along with and you learn the material, it doesn't matter if you're the most talented person in the world. If you're solid, you're good. The person's like, great, you're hired. That's one less thing I got to worry about, So if you're one less thing they got to worry about, you're going to come, you're going to be on time, you're going to be solid, you're going to be there, then then you're going to get hired. You're getting hired consistently. If you got a reputation, people talk. So, I mean, this is how once you played with the band, guess what? That drummer from that band that you played with a year later is in some other band, and then they need a guitar player, and they're trying to figure it out, and they're like, oh, that guy Dave, he played with us, and he was really good. I get calls all the time for somebody that I played with, or not even somebody that I played with, someone that knew someone that I played with and got my number, and I've hired people like that too. I need a drummer. Oh, I know a guy that's phenomenal, but he can't do it because he's, the best guys are on tour or whatever. But he's like, oh, here's this other guy. He's really good. And I've had guys that I hired on a recommendation by someone that I trusted, someone that I knew was a solid pro guy. And if they say you're gonna hire Ed. He's a really good. Don't worry about it. He's gonna come in. He's gonna nail it. I've sight unseen. They show up at the gig. I just told them the songs. They show up at the gig, and the right person, they come in and nail it. And guess what? They come in and nail it. Guess what? They just got the next 20 gigs. Because obviously, if you're getting hired as a fill-in guy at the last minute, chances are that band is having some issues with that position. The guy is unreliable. He's not whatever. He couldn't make whatever. The chances are that you nail that gig. They may just offer you that gig permanently, or at the very least, you go to the top of the list of their fill-ins. They may have 10 people that they use as fill-in on drums or guitar. You go to the top of the list if you come in and nail it, because that's a constant thing with bands that are working a lot. They're always, because here's the thing: the people that aren't as good, they go to the bottom of the list unless nobody else is available. And then the people that are really good, they get off the list because they're too busy, because they're always, they're so good, they're getting booked by everybody else and they're never available. So there's always room to get in there if you're solid, But make sure you keep a good professional relationship and don't leave anybody with a bad taste in their mouth. It's more people. It's not people. People lose gigs more than people get gigs. Like people lose gigs. If you're solid and reliable, chances are you're gonna, get that guy's gig, even if he's more talented. But anyway, if you that's professional, that's the whole. If you're doing a professional session type thing, but if you're doing from the lower end to the more pro end, like Phil X touring with Bon Jovi or whatever. But if you're just trying to get together, start with, like, my brother is playing guitar, and once in a while he just gets together with some friends or people he meets. But open mics are good. Craigslist are good. Just get out there and do it. Don't make a big whole, I don't know if I'm ready, but just go out there and do it, man. I'm on a podcast. I'm live. So I got construction people doing, there's a little bit of noise in the background. So don't mind that, we got some construction going on in the studio. And I'm going to see if am I still live? Yes, I am still live. Oh, that's good. So, Robert, did that answer your question? If Robert's still on. That's a good question. A lot of people ask stuff. That's the type of stuff I'd like people to ask, because I have people always telling me, or my people always asking me advice, and then other people saying, man, you should give more advice because you give good advice. Because I've been around all different levels. I know a bit about, contracts. I know a bit about gigging. I know a bit about gear. I know about agents. I know about the finances and, just getting gigs as a session guy. I have a ton more if you... yeah, sure. ask a question and set them up, and I'll knock them down. That's what I'm here for. Yeah, it's always good. Better that than me just ranting for 2 hours straight. And I got a lot of people that, colleagues and stuff, or people that are a little less experienced, that are always asking me questions. Which gear, what compressor should I get for my studio, or how do I get this type of gig, or how do I get an agent, or whatever. It's always and it's probably good to have it on a recorded thing like this, because then I can point people to the podcast and be like, I answered that on this podcast. Check it out. Actually, I have more people that I know that should be asking questions in here that aren't. As I hear from, like, the community of, this person's struggling with this, they should give you a call. I'm like, yeah, they should give me a call, or they should get on the podcast and ask it. First ever gig, like first time on stage, how do you handle your nerves? What's the beat? Let's see. First, my first gig. I'd say if you're gonna just start. Don't even start it with a gig. Start with like open mic where you just gotta play one song. Start with karaoke. Just to get used to in front of people performing, and you gotta just set up yourself mentally. It's like if you've done the practicing, get make sure be prepared. Maybe you want to live stream it from your home where you're comfortable, and then watch it back and be like, okay, get to the point where you're confident. Like, I know at least this song, I know I could nail it really good. And just go in. Better to go in aggressively, over aggressive, than to be like, oh, I hope they like it. And I'm being, because if I learn something new and I'm careful about it, I mess it up. If I practice enough where it's second nature, I go in aggressively, the muscle memory kind of takes over. And guess what? If you mess up, if you hit a wrong note, everybody does it. Don't stress about everybody may hits a wrong note. Everybody, sometimes, and you're gonna have to do that a little bit. As long as if you've practiced it where you pretty much got it pretty good, and well, okay, you messed up this little part there. So what? You come back the next week, and I do it on the live cast every week. Well, I learn a brand new song because and I screw up the solo, and then I watch the video and I cringe, and then I work on the solo, and the next week I nail it. That's what are you gonna do? Of course, you want to prepare as much as possible. So it's just like anything else, just like a football game or something. You practice and practice and practice, and you do your best. From a mental standpoint, I would say some people go to like have a drink at the bar, but I think that makes you sloppy. I know people that think, oh, I just have a shot, and yes, that calms your nerves, but it also makes you less good. So Eddie Van Halen used to say that when he was drinking, he'd get off the stage after a show and be like, man, that was phenomenal. I kicked ass, man. He had a blast, and he thought, and then he listened back to the recording, and there was mistakes all over the place. It was sloppy, and he was frustrated. When he quit drinking, he'd be on stage, and he'd notice every mistake, but then he'd watch the video later and be like, man, that was great. When you're doing it, I've had times where I screw something up, and time slows down, and every note seems like it lasted for an hour, and everybody in the world heard it. And I listen back to the recording. I'm like, oh, where was that mistake? Oh, so it's like, just do it, and the more you do it, and don't expect. And I, talked to people about this. Don't expect there ever to be like. There's never going to be a perfect show. I have this female singer that I know that was like always saying, well, I'll get it this right and then I'll get that right. I'm like, she's talking like she's going to get it to some perfect thing. I'm like, look, if you're waiting for the time you're going to have the perfect show, I'm still waiting. There's always everybody. I don't care if you're Eddie Van Halen or Stevie Wonder. You're going to hit something that's not exactly how you would have done it or your best every time, but it should be solid. Some people just clearly aren't ready because they haven't done the homework. They haven't done the work. And that frustrates me. It's like, well, do the work. And if you're going to go out there first, I know people want to go out there sometimes and prove something. So they go out and the hardest thing, they want to sing the Steve Perry song or play this, to Joe Chat. Like, dude, just play something easy that you could get on stage, play and get off and be like, man, that didn't suck. And then take it from there. People always have something to prove. I want to show everybody that I've been working hard and I'm so good. And then they try this hard thing and then they're stressed out. It's like, pick the 3 chords song and nail that. And then pick the 4 chord song. And then pick this something that has a little soul. Work up. There's no hurry. Like, get it. But everybody would rather see someone on stage at open mic play something real simple, play it good and solid, than try something really hard and then kind of... not that you shouldn't stretch yourself, but at the beginning, just do. I don't know where you're in. I know. Well, these days, open mics, they're not too much around. When we're back to gigging again, I host at Rockaway River Barn in New Jersey every Thursday an open mic. Okay. Construction guys. But when we're not, if you're ever in New Jersey, we have every Thursday open mic, and everybody's welcome. I've had kids that are 9-year-old kids there. I've had bands that have been touring bands that have come. I have people that's their first time ever on stage there. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's a what do you call, supportive atmosphere, because we've all been there. I don't care who it is. I don't care if you're Stevie. There was a time when you're starting out. I mean, some of these people started when they were 5, like Stevie Wonder and Michael Jackson. But most of us, were in a garage band at 12 or 15, and like Nirvana, Dave Grohl talks about, they were in the garage just sucking, having a ball, being friends, just loving playing songs that they dig, and they just kept doing it, and then eventually they became Nirvana. So do it for the love of it. Find, do an open mic, get some people to play, even if it's just a friend, get some friends over and just jam together as friends, and maybe invite a couple of friends over to, hey, we're going to have pizza and beer, and we're going to play some songs, and you guys can come, invite your neighbor to listen, and maybe that's your first gig. And that's a comfortable atmosphere in your living room, just jamming and goofing around and trying some stuff. I think people think it, and then they don't do it. Just start, and it's not going to be perfect, but as long as you do the work, do the homework, like do the gig, record it if you can, or have a friend. Now with the phones, there's no excuse not to record stuff. It's everybody, back in the day, I have to buy a special recorder and get somebody to hold it for me. Now it's, just have a friend or put it on the table with a little mini tripod or something and record your thing. And then listen back to it and whatever you didn't like, fix it, practice it, and then come back the next week and do it a little better. And, open mics are great. I mean, I know, again, it's hard to talk about open mics now because there's not many. Maybe they'll start coming back up with them again soon. I'm not sure. Probably not for a while. Because even gigs, I think gigging is starting to come back. They're having outdoor gigs where people are socially distanced in a big open area. Open mics are tricky because you have all these people coming up right on stage and sharing the mic. That's probably not going to happen again for a while. So even if we start doing Rockaway, maybe we won't do as much open mics or tell people they have to bring their own mic. I don't know. These days, I never like people using my mic. As a singer, I'm more paranoid about getting sick, because most people that have a day job, they get sick, they call in sick, they watch Price is Right for a couple of days, and they're fine. But me, if I get sick, I still got to do the gig on Friday. I still got to do the gig on Saturday. Still got to sing those high B's or whatever at 2 a.m. and do it again the night before, and I can't call in sick. I mean, luckily with lip service, I have 2 other girl singers, but I can't be like, I'm not singing tonight, you guys sing everything. Even if I have a sore throat, I still got to sing. Maybe I'll skip once in a blue moon. I'll skip a tune, but that's not really an option. People want to hear a certain song that they like hearing the band do. You got to do it, and it's got a high B flat in the chorus or whatever. You're sick, so what? Nobody cares. So I'm paranoid about being sick, because that's a horrible thing where you have to struggle all night to sing for 3 hours when you're sick already, when you're stuffy and you're miserable anyway. So it's, with a day job, it's easy. You call in sick, you sleep late, you watch The Price is Right, you watch Judge Judy, you sleep in the afternoon and you get some pizza delivered, But when you got to sing and you're miserable and you got a fever and you're stuffy and you still got to try to sound good, and when you don't sound good, people don't know that you're sick, so then they're like, that guy sucks, and not that happens, but if you have good training, my voice is. I've been surprised myself sometimes where like I was so sick and sound came out, and it sounded, when I listened back to the tape, it sounded half decent, where people didn't realize I was sick. But that's from years of training. But as far as answering the question of the first ever gig, as far as nerves, Eddie Van Halen, don't feel bad if you got nerves. Everybody gets nerves, Eddie Van Halen said, and this was years ago, but after they had done multinational tours and sold millions of records, #1 songs, how many who's been on stage more than Eddie Van Halen? And he would say, before every show, I still get butterflies. This is Eddie Van Halen in the 80s or whatever, late 80s. I still get butterflies. He's like, the day I stop getting some kind of butterflies before I get on stage is the day I'll quit, because that means I don't care, all that means is you care. Now, it can't be to the point where it's debilitating, where you're like, and you're, but get over it. It's like, what's gonna happen? Nobody's gonna come out with a gun and shoot you. Worst case, somebody's like, you suck, and throws a tomato at your head. You're like, and then be like, well, I'll work on it and I'll come back next week, okay? But dude, and they'll get a kick out of it, But hopefully you've practiced enough where it doesn't suck, Just take something that's really comfortable and easy that you could do no matter what. freaking Bob Dylan song. I don't know. If you're singing, and just, and guess what? Not everybody's going to like it. I don't care who you are. I don't, there's always going to be some troll that's going to be like, you suck. I've seen phenomenal people that I know are like really great touring people, have done records, and there's some drunk asshole who's like, you suck. So what? That's one thing you got to develop in this business, is like a little bit of a thick skin, especially with the social media. Because I don't care who you are. I got videos out where I have 2,000 people saying, you're great, phenomenal, I love this tune, love your voice, great guitar. And then always there's some schmuck, some troll who's like, you suck. So what? You got to first, and I've talked with this about countless other artists that are doing social media and marketing and stuff, and it's a constant discussion between us. It's like, what trolling did you get this week? We pass some stuff around, and we joke about how we responded. As one of my friends did a video, and it was a really cool video. I actually forwarded on my channel, on my page, but there was some guy in there that like was complaining about the timing or something, and your timing was off, and it's unprofessional, or it's gonna make me shut off the video. And I was like, we were just joking about it, because I added the clip from the Whiplash movie where the guy was obsessive about tempo. If you ever seen it, it's a fun movie, Whiplash. It's about the drum kid. Guy's learning drumming at music school, and he has a teacher that's like just a maniac. And the guy he counted him in. My lights are noise-based, sound-based, but he counted him in, and he was a little bit slow of the beat. And the guy, go Google it. Go Google Whiplash, rushing or dragging. If you've never seen the movie, if you've seen the movie, but we joked about it. It was like, there's always somebody from the peanut gallery, and somebody always has to, I don't care who you are, watch, I think is it Jimmy Kimmel, who has mean tweets? Celebrities who've sold millions of movies, millions of records, and they find tweets where this person's voice sounds like a dead duck or something. Somebody's always going to have something to say. I know people that don't like the beat. I've had people I hurled a chair at your head. I've never had somebody that bad, but I was in high school band, and we were kind of rambunctious a little bit, and I did have a guy hurl one of those aluminum music stands, hurl that across the room, and because he was like, guys, because we were notorious, we were kids, we would, in between, while he was trying to teach something to the horn section or whatever, we would be like, the guitar players would be fiddling on a little Van Halen riff on the side, and he was like, he flipped out and threw them, and he was like, stop, when I'm talking, do not play a note, and focus, and we got, I can't, he flipped out on us. But, you can't, I can't blame him. But yeah, that movie was not quite realistic. It was a little over the top but it is based on something that you do see, which is, yes, you do have band leaders like that are rule with an iron fist and are a little bit of a jerk, and they justify it by like, we're making the music better, and maybe they are, maybe he's trying to prepare you, what my voice teacher did was, you'd sing something really good, and she'd try to throw you off your game. And she never did it in a mean way, but she did it in a blunt way sometimes. But she wanted to make sure, it's even like that movie Pick of Destiny, where Jack Black is playing guitar, and Kyle Gass is like throwing bottles at him, and he has to wear a helmet, and he's like trying to make, in a sense, I mean, that's a little crazy and it's funny, but in a sense, it's like, you're going to get distracted, and it's not just like, if you could just play something perfect on your couch, that doesn't, you also need to be able to play it on stage when the lights is in your eye, and it's too dark and you can't see the fingerboard, and some girl pulls up her shirt, or some drunk guy is screaming, you suck, free bird, or whatever, and that comes with time. I still get distracted sometimes. I was doing a live cast, and I was doing the solo for something, and all of a sudden I saw on my phone my neighbor was texting me, and I got distracted and screwed up the solo, because I'm thinking to myself, why is he texting me? Is he going to tell me that the music's too loud and he's called the cops? I don't, so I was like, I have been on a booed. We guess what? We've all been on a booed stage. You know, I hear stories, and it's funny when I hear stories from somebody famous. Prince. Okay, Prince got booed off stage when he opened up for the Rolling Stones. Okay, Prince. Sam Cooke got a bad review when he bombed at the Copa. It happens. It happens. The Prince story, I was watching one of the Prince documentaries or something. They said that he opened up and this was early in his career, but he still had some big hits. This was like around Little Red Corvette or something, before Purple Rain. You got to take it, and I have my own stories, man. Whew, I have some stories early on when but Prince, they had an audience for the Rolling Stones, and it was like hardcore bikers, like not Altamont, but that kind of crowd. And he comes up in like his pink panties and wearing nothing else and like a long trench coat, and he playing his funk, whatever. He's obviously Prince is a phenomenal musician, phenomenal performer, but guess what? They weren't having it. He got booed off stage, and Mick Jagger actually he was gonna quit the tour. He was so dejected he felt humiliated. Prince, and Mick Jagger talked him into no, he had a bad gig, he wasn't a good fit with this audience, but Mick Jagger talked Prince into not quitting the tour, opening up for the Rolling Stones. So Sam Cooke played at the Copa, which was where like Sinatra and some of the others, and he said, I bombed at the Copa, and then he worked on his stuff and came back a year later, reworked his set. I don't know why, I forget why he bombed. He just wasn't the right material for the room or something. The weird thing about Sam Cooke is he wanted to be like a Sinatra, and because he was black and he did a little more gospel soulful stuff, he felt that wasn't mainstream, and he was put in this box, and he wanted to be like the next Sinatra or whatever. But I liked Sam Cooke better than Sinatra, and I think the soulful stuff is what made him better. he sang with this soul, he was originally in the Soul Stirrers and everything. But as far as booing, I remember one time it was a brand new band. We were all talented, and I played in bands before, but we had a weird thing with the sound system, and it was a new sound system, and the drummer was really loud, and I got lost in this, like I just couldn't hear anything, and I got lost in the song, and I think the bass player was playing the verse, and I was singing and playing the chorus, and it was like, then we just, and then I think the bass player just stopped, and he was like, dude, let's just stop. We just all over, and we stopped, and I think the song, I'm pretty sure, I don't remember the exact song, but I remember it was a Stone Temple Pilots song for some reason. And we just stopped the song, and the audience was, I'm like, and we just joked about it. I'm like, sorry, we fucked up. We're going to start this again when you get it right. And we just joked about it, and the audience laughed, and we laughed. And I was mortified, but you got to continue. And we did, we finished the set, and we sounded good the rest of the set, I think. And then the whole band was like, dude, we got to figure out what's going on with that PA. It was feeding back, and I couldn't hear anything. And the drummer was like a 250-pound dude, and he would, on a small stage, he would bang the crap out of the drums where you couldn't hear anything else. You deal with all that stuff, and the more you deal with it, the more you handle it. Playing with it's a nice, when you're a little more established, you get to play with solid people and solid sound systems where that stuff isn't as much an issue. You start working with people. When you're early on, it's like you work with a drummer that's good enough, and he's the best you found, and you don't have any paying gigs, so you gotta you gotta take what you can get and deal with the issues, and but nothing cuts through a mix more than a boo, which is interesting because ooh is like kind of a boo is usually done low, and that wouldn't cut through a mix but I guess because of the significance of it. The funny thing is when Bruce Springsteen would early on, people would go Bruce, and when people first started doing that, he thought he was getting booed. It's like, he's like, no, they're saying Bruce. They're like, Bruce. It's an unfortunate name, I guess, for that in that context. But if you've been there, hey, you got to go through that. But the thing is, work on it. Why? What didn't sound good, and fix it. There's nothing more motivating than getting moved off stage to, I mean, there's that. I mean, even Whiplash, that story about Charlie Parker, from what I know, that's a story that I heard back in music school about Charlie Parker. He gets on stage, plays something, doesn't play, up to their standard. The drummer, and this is in the Charlie Parker movie. I think it's called Bird. Well, I think what's the guy, the actor who played Idi Amin with the weird Forrest Whitaker, right? He played Charlie Parker in Bird. So, and it's even in the movie where the drummer takes a cymbal, throws it on the stage, and basically he doesn't get booed off. He gets mortified and embarrassed and humiliated on stage. So then he went away into some cabin or wherever and practiced for like a year, like 8+ hours a day, and came back and kicked ass. So, in a way, the teacher was correct, and that sometimes being humiliated is the best motivation to practice. That I might tell you something. Lens fall out of a pair. Hey, that's not the worst thing. That's something where you could just be like, because it's almost funny. Sometimes silly, funny things happen on stage. I've had the strap break on the guitar and fall on the ground. That's just, it happens. Then you make sure you get good straps and strap blocks after that. You learn. I've heard the cable pop right out of the guitar in the middle of a solo. Then that's why I realized you should put the cable down into the strap and then under. So even if it yanks, it's not going to pull right out of the jack. You learn these things. But I was going to make a point. I had a good point, and I forget what it was, about, oh yeah, this is my point. And I forget, somebody was saying the same thing. I've heard this before. Oh, the drummer from Fanny, and I've heard this before, but this is the latest person I talk about it. She said that, the drums always kind of came natural to her, so she never really practiced that much. She was good, she's like, if it didn't come naturally to me, I probably would have been a lot better because I would have practiced. He's like, I've noticed people that didn't have the natural talent wound up practicing so much that they got better, they got really good. And I've noticed the same thing. I've noticed people who had naturally good voices, who without a lesson sounded pretty darn good, but they never get much better because they just rest on that. And, where people who kind of suck, they're like, man, I need 2 years of lessons just to not suck. And then they get into, the habit of, like, I just got to really practice the crap out of this song just so it doesn't suck. And then once you get to a point where it's actually, you don't suck, you still have the mentality of, I got to practice, I got to get it just right. Whereas the people who have that natural ability, they usually just kind of coast, and you never get to that top level with just natural talent. You need some kind of practice regimen to really take that. Michael Jordan got kicked off the basketball team in high school. Okay, so and then he practiced to the point where he was the best. And Michael Jordan practiced a lot. I mean, he didn't make the sophomore basketball team. He practiced like all summer, and then he made the juniors. So there's another example where the natural talent people. I don't think I was naturally talented at guitar or voice or anything, but I had a good mind and a good sensibility. And even my singing teacher says, when she chose students, she's like, when I started teaching, I chose students based on their voice. Like, if someone had a really good voice, I'd be like, oh, this is going to be a great student. She's like, then I started teaching students, it didn't work. It didn't work out for those people, usually. She's like, I started choosing students based on their mind, who was smart, who was focused, who was dedicated. And those people wind up having really good careers, even if they came in with no voice. So it's just a matter of, it's harder. Certain thing. I mean, if something comes natural to you, great. You capitalize on that thing, musically or whatever. Some people are better with rhythm. Some people are better with melody. Work on your weak points. Work on your strong points. Nobody can be great at everything. I've had people say I'm pretty well rounded because I know how to do some country finger picking, and I know heavy metal, and I know rock, and I know some reggae, and I know some jazz, and I have one or two things that are my best thing, and but I try to bring other things in because I think it's cool to learn country finger picking. But I can't hold a candle to, Chet Atkins or somebody that's really good at it. But I think it introduces, a cool other thing that it stretches me, But anyway, what was my point? We're talking about, okay, what do you need to do to kind of get out there? Obviously, be motivated to not suck, practice, get out there with something that you just know it's going to be good. That's all. The first time, and I have people come into the recording studio, and this is something every time. It's their first time in the studio, and they choose frickin' Mariah Carey and Steve because they got something to prove. Dude, it's your first time in the studio. All I care about is getting out of the studio and have something that you can play for your mom or your girlfriend or whatever, or your boyfriend or whatever, and be like, hey, you can sing. That's not bad. And I don't care if it's the freaking easiest song in the world. Nobody cares if it's the easiest song. Some of the best songs ever are the easiest songs in the world. But just can you put it over? Where it sounds like for real. Like you're not a student trying to sing, but hey, that's a person that I could listen to that in the car and enjoy it and not, that's all. And then once you could do that on one song, then just find another song that you could do that on. Don't try to prove to the world that you're, I got to show them I'm a good song. I have to play freaking Hot for Teacher on guitar. Start with a 3-chord tune. Get comfortable with it and then add on that, and so you get to the comfortable of, okay, I know I could get on stage and do something that's musical. Sometimes people make that their whole career of playing something that's just musically good and never do anything difficult, but, of course, you find out where your path is. If you want to become the next Steve Vai, great. Start somewhere and just start doing it. I know today with the COVID it's hard, but now they have, live streams and stuff, things you could do. And I think even now people are still cool with, hey, let's do something. Let's do some at a rehearsal space or do something in the garage. We'll maintain some distance so we're not, I think people are starting to say, okay, we could get together, not in a large group. We're not going to have a party with 100 people in a big but we could do a rehearsal space and we'll stay 6 feet apart and not be stupid. We'll wash our hands and there's nothing. You could still get together with people. I have a live stream here. Karina gets here. We wash our hands. Obviously, you can't sing with a mask on. And then we have a couple of people in the audience sometimes, and usually they have a mask on, to be honest. And I'm careful, and, I try not to, I wash my hands, and, so use your judgment. But, you could still get together. I'd say to get together online is a little tricky because there's a delay. And I've tried one, it was like almost comical because we're like, let's try this. We'll live stream, and we'll try to do a rehearsal online. And we were all I was playing to what we were hearing, and 2 seconds in, we were just all off a time. It sounded like we're all messing up, but it was just like what the bass player played. I heard it a second later, and so none of us could be in sync. So doing that thing online, usually most of the videos you see, they're not actually doing that live. It's like one guy recorded his, and then the other guy recorded his, and they patched it together. There's ways to do it live, but I think you need a super fast internet and tweak your computer, and even then, even when you're recording in Pro Tools, sometimes there's a split-second delay that throws people off, and that's just right in your computer. Even as I'm speaking now, the delay of my voice in my headphones is 100 milliseconds, which musically is like a 30-second note. So it's tricky. So, but you could even do recording. Take whatever GarageBand or whatever you got, do some recording and send it to a friend that does another instrument and have them play with it. Do stuff. Just do stuff with people, and you might meet people that you gel with, whether it's songwriting or recording or playing live, and you might that leads to other things. So you just gotta get out there. Don't overthink it, but always trying to be better. Try and improve your songwriting. Try and improve your ear training. Try to improve your singing, and use the shows as kind of a litmus test. Here's the thing with singing. like, or when I was singing training, it's like you work in a song where you get it, you nail it at home, then you go out on stage and see what stays. Especially beginners. Like when I teach people, and I've had, my teacher would teach people and train people, I would be like, you got it. Now, once you got this where you're sounding good in the singing class, now go out. I don't care if it's karaoke, open mic, auditioning for bands, joining a band, or whatever. Go out there and start singing it, or else you're going to stagnate, because there's only so much you could do in your house, practicing. I've known people that have been practicing for years, and they're not gigging, and they're recording, and they're trying to get a record deal, like they're writing and recording in big million-dollar studios, but they've hardly done gigs. I'm like, dude, do gigs, so that when your recording will be better, your singing will be better, your performance will be better when you are touring, if you get that far or whatever. But you practice it at home, and then you go live and you see what holds together at rehearsal or open mic or karaoke, whatever, because I guarantee something's going to fall. And if you're taking, let's say, singing lessons, for example, you record it and you might bring it back to your singing teacher and be like, dude, I nailed this in my lesson, but when I went out, this note was flat. Why? And a good teacher would be like, well, halfway through the song, you stop taking good breaths. Then when you're live that you got to still kind of remind yourself to take the big... It took me a little... Like, when I started gigging to the 90s or whatever, singing, I realized that sometimes I would, I lost my breath or whatever. I stopped taking, because you're getting distracted and you're getting into the song and whatever. Yeah, so then it's like, okay, I got to make sure. I got to the point where I realized that if I take a really good breath, like the first line of the first song, I got that feeling, and the rest of the night, I just kept that feeling going. But if I started out with a weak breath, then the rest of the night I'm like chasing, trying to find it. So that's something you could only have learned by doing a gig, especially for singing, because it's very physical. But the same thing, guitar. You could nail the solo 10 ways till Sunday at home. You go out live and you screw it up. What happened? It's mental. Usually, sometimes it's like the lights in the club were so dark I couldn't see my fingerboard. So then you learn, well, maybe I should practice not looking at the guitar. There's some of the things you can't learn them all from a lesson or from, you got to do it live, and then you realize some things you learn from it's helpful if you learn from other people and their mistakes, and they say, do this, don't do that, and you should. If someone's been doing this for 20, 30 years, and they say, do this, just do it. Save yourself the trouble of falling on your ass and then learning it the hard way. But certain things you're going to have to learn the hard way, and that's fine, because that helps it stick in your brain. That's just learning anything. Business, you'll lose some money in business before you make some money, because you're going to screw up. And then once you do, you realize not to be reckless in investments, or not to be, you sometimes, like in business, you think, if we do this thing, we're going to make a lot of money, and then you realize you lost it all. And then the next time it's like, wait, you get a little skeptical, because the first time you're starting to think. I see people do this in business. They start thinking about how they're going to spend the money they're going to make on this new venture, and they ignore the risk and the chances and the concept of, hey, I could lose all this money too if this goes south. Once you learn the hard way, then you have an almost instinctual response of, wait a minute, let me be, you forces you to do the right thing and be a little more skeptical, or whatever it is. With singing, forces you to prepare a little more, because you've, had the booze. I think for the most part, I don't, early on it got to a point where, like, I want to not suck, and now, I want it to be pretty consistent in each show. It's like, it's pretty consistent, but then I kind of screwed up this part of that part. Now it's to the point where I could do shows regularly, and I would say it never suck. Well, I don't think it never sucks, because I've been doing it long enough where even if I make a mistake, it doesn't suck. Nobody thinks I'm a beginner. It's obvious that I think sometimes with the one band we have so many requests that we're throwing songs that we don't know, that I have to wing, and sometimes you get a little aggressive thinking you kind of know it, and then you really don't. And so but for the most part, if I'm doing something where I actually know the set list, I pretty much, the night is pretty solid. Like I almost at the end of every night, I could count on my hand, I made a mistake here, and I made a mistake here, and made a mistake here. And this is everybody. I talk to other people that are professional musicians that play 3, 4, 5 nights a week, whatever. And they're like, yeah, I know how many mistakes I made every night, or big ones. but nobody else notices except maybe another musician or another guitar player. Usually, you always have that one or a couple of guitar players in the back of the room that are like this, that are just sour grapes because they don't have a gig that night, basically. And they're like, I could do that better. Well, why don't you then? Where's your band playing? Because they're playing at home and they and they have maybe don't have a band or have never been in the band or they're kicked out of their band because they're a jerk, and then they're it's like, wait, that guy is up there doing it. If you could do it better than him, then why don't you? And shut the f up. But it was funny. My guitar teacher, and who was phenomenal, better he could play like all the Steve Vai stuff and Paul Gilbert stuff like by ear. Like the new Paul Gilbert record would come out, and he would just listen to it and write out the sheet music of it without picking up the guitar, and then be able to play it. This guy was like whatever you call it, virtuoso. So it was intimidating, but he taught me a lot of stuff. Don Manzo. Unfortunately, he died a few years ago of a brain aneurysm in his 50s, which was horrible because it was just one of those things where nobody expected it. It wasn't like he had cancer and he was fighting. No, just woke up one day with a headache, got to the hospital, and he was gone before they even got there. But anyway, sad story. But anyway, Don would say, yeah, something. I think he had a name for them. I think he was like this. If you have those old, those people that sit at the front of the stage, that they're guitar players, and they're like staring at you with like a scowl on their face. And he's like, when he was really good, he was like, I would just go right up to them and play like the craziest, most insane solo right in their face. And he's like, and that would usually shut them up. He had fun with that. You got to take it with a grain of salt. Like, it's like my song "Gonna Do" is kind of like based on that. The song is like, hey, there's words. Or like, I could fall flat on my face and be a damn disgrace if I want to. I'm just going to do... In other words, I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do. And if you like it, great. If you don't, I'm just still going to do it because I love doing what I do. And there's going to be people who dig it and people who hate it. But I'm going to do what I'm going to do to make me happy. And that's a good philosophy in life, period. Unless you're doing like crack or something, But for the most part, and I actually got that concept from Gene Simmons. I saw Gene Simmons talk at some kind of conference or something, and his philosophy, because he, was like, he's like, I didn't care what people thought. I could, he'd get up on stage in a weird costume. I could put our band on a lunchbox. I don't care. I wanted to do it, and it got me where I wanted to be, and I never really cared what anybody else thought. He's like, that's a weird concept to me. Worrying about what somebody else thinks. How does that affect you at all? In any way, unless that person is your boss and they're going to fire you, unless that person's paying your rent, how does one person or, thought about what you're doing, or whether they like it or not, or think it's a good idea, or they hate it, or what does that have anything to do with you? That's irrelevant completely to you. Live your life to be. I see too many people they're buying a car, they're spending money they don't have on a car to impress people that they don't like. It's like, wait a minute, people spend half their life just trying to. It's like, why? I'm like, I don't care, what the neighbors think, as long as I get along with them. I don't really care if they know or think or anything about what I'm doing. That's a good philosophy in life, for the most part. Not just music. Of course, if you put a video of your song out and 50 people say it sucks, maybe you should work on the song. Of course. Take it with a grain of salt. Don't go home crying, because somebody put a negative comment on your YouTube video. Because that's something that's gonna happen no matter who you are. If you're freaking Prince or Adele or Paul McCartney, somebody's gonna be like. Paul McCartney did that thing with Kanye West, and some kids are like, "Oh, who's this? Who's this Paul McCartney?" Kanye West is giving him it's great that Kanye West is giving this guy a shot to sing on his record, and most of the English speaking world is like, "Are you retarded?" But anyway, so that's always gonna happen. But yeah, of course, you wanna, even when you do like stuff on YouTube or Facebook and marketing and stuff, you put, with marketing and stuff, you might put a video or an ad or something out to promote an album or whatever, and you see, well, only 5% clicked on this one and 20% clicked on that one. Well, then don't use this one and use that one. Try different ones, and if nobody likes this one, try something else. Until for marketing, for songs, you got to do what artistically works for you. Don't try to chase what people are gonna like, but you should try to make a good song, and which then read the books, like Jason Blum. Hopefully, am I still on? I think. Is this froze? Am I offline? Or am I live? I don't know. If I'm still live, great. It looks like somebody did a thumbs up, so that's a good thing. But yeah, any other? It's getting a little late, and I got to do my own practicing. I had to practice some songs. Cool, thanks for telling me. Because sometimes I'm like, am I talking? And is there anybody out there? From anybody know what record that's from? I like to do musical trivia in the middle. That's off of the Pink Floyd The Wall. Is there anybody out there? Is there anybody? What song is that? Is there anybody out? Is there anybody? Anyway, but yeah, I think those were all good advice I would give to anybody. Actually, this is something that I would play. Anybody in a band should watch this video, because I get these types of questions a lot, and yeah, do it and get out there and just keep trying. But again, the important thing is the difference. I think is people who go out there and just, so what if you suck? I mean, there's times I went out and something wasn't good. Here's the thing. Here's my philosophy, because there was times early on where people were like, "You're a guitar player, you're not a singer," or "You're born with it, you're not born with it, and you're not born with it," or whatever, all that bullshit, and that messes with your head. But my philosophy, and this is what my teacher told me, was like, listen, if you just get a little better every day, eventually it's going to be good. I mean, just mathematically, if it sucks this much, and then the next time it sucks this much, and the next time it sucks this much, eventually it's not going to suck. And then it's 1% better, and then a month later it's 1% better. Eventually it's going to be pretty good. It just may take a month, it may take a year, it may take 10 years, but eventually, if your goal is to be really good, that's doable. That's doable. Now, for some people, it may take 2 months of lessons. So some people may take 2 years of lessons just to not, and it's always, for your whole life, you're always going to be like, oh, shoot, even Freddie Mercury had takes that were bad takes on Bohemian. I've heard them, like Bohemian, not bad takes, but Bohemian Rhapsody, I was in one producer seminar or whatever, and he had some of the tracks from Bohemian Rhapsody, and he would, he was playing the different takes, and he'd say, oh, this take was okay, but Freddie wasn't happy with it. This take was okay. Oh, and this is the take that wound up on the record, and this was just, he found, just the right thing, So that's, we're always struggling to make it better or best, and that's, psychological more than anything, as far as getting your mind right to focus and practice, and, practice right, and that takes lessons, and because it's not just, and that's a million other hours of lessons and podcasts or whatever about good practicing technique. But even this podcast, if you look at, or whatever you want to call this live stream, if you look at the video quality, just that, and the audio quality early from the live streams that we did on the Saturdays, the video was fuzzy and the lighting was weird and the audio quality was muddy. And each week I listen back and I'm like, maybe I'll try a different mic, or maybe I'll tweak the software, or maybe I'll change the use a different camera, and then then I had to buy. I figured did some research on YouTube and Google about what capture card to get, and I had to upgrade the. Each week it got a little bit better. Eventually, now with the video quality. I don't have the lighting set up the way I want, but the video quality on this is pretty darn good. And it took me a couple months to figure out the technology to get it. And I'm too lazy to do the lighting right now. Actually, if I had the light set up right, it would even be better. Well, that's not. Anyway, it's actually too bright. But how do you do this? If I did something more like this, see, it's even better. But I'm too lazy to. not too lazy, but I think this is fine. I just opened up the aperture on the computer, but it's, it's pretty good quality for just a talking thing. But anyway, that's my point. I think that's, it's getting a little late. I got some practicing to do, so I think that's enough for today. But 9:30, we'll be doing a live. Come on to the line, 9:30, and any requests. I'll probably be doing the Golden Earring song I've been working on. I was working on Twilight Zone. I had a couple of requests for Golden Earring. Thank you. It's Saturday nights are sounding better week by week. Thank you. Appreciate it. Because, we are working on it, because we were, even when Karina started coming on, she would phone me or text me like, oh, this was muddy and we need to fix the sound, and I couldn't hear my monitor. So now we have a monitor so we could hear the track a little better, so we're a little tighter. And we changed, instead of having a mic in the room, I'm going direct right into the thing. Now, last week's mix, I listened back, the guitar was way back in the mix because I couldn't hear it in the room what was coming through the computer. So now I learned to, that's how it goes. You tweak it and get a little bit better. There's a concept in Japan called, Tony Robbins talks about this, called KANAI, which is just an acronym for constant never-ending improvement. And that's how, like, Toyota and these companies, they just, like, every week or every month they're trying, look, what can we improve? Maybe if we change this little process here on how we work this machine, we could get it just a little bit more efficient. And then they add, by the end of the year, so much stuff has changed. They've maximized their efficiency by 20%. So that's, just always improve. Even if it's 1%, even if, practice. I tell my student, practice every day. Even if it's 5 minutes, don't not practice all week and then just practice 4 hours on Saturday. Practice every day, even if it's just picking the guitar for 5 minutes and doing a couple of ear training exercises or something. Do something so that I'm like, you know what? I'm going to sleep tonight knowing I'm a little bit better than I was yesterday. Even if it's like 0.1%, it adds up. You just keep building, and eventually you get good and better, I'm still learning. I watched some of these guys, Danny Gatton, Steve Vai, and I'm like, oh man, I suck. I can't do that. But then, but then I try to learn the thing, and then I do the thing that I was like, I'm working on this country like that was it Chet Atkins? I don't know, something I saw on YouTube. I'm like, that's really wild. I can't do that. So now I've been working on it every week. And there's things like Khaki King showed me these things, and the first time she showed me, I was like stumbling and fumbling. I'm like, yeah, and she's like, no, like this, and blah blah blah. But then after a few weeks, I practiced it where I kind of did it, and now it's like second nature. I could go ding 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 ding. Some of these, 4 or 5 of these patterns that she showed me, I could nail them. Like, so it's like, it's good to be motivated by. There's always going to be somebody better at something. Nobody is, Chet Atkins was better at Steve Vai at country fingerpicking, and Steve Vai is better than Chet Atkins at hard rock arpeggios and whammy bar techniques. There's nobody that's great at it all. But Victor Wooten is great at 3 things on bass, and James Jamerson is better, is not as good at certain things and better at other things. Finding a groove and a tasty thing behind a singer. James Jamerson is the man. Better than Victor Wooten. Victor Wooten is better for instrumental stuff. Even he's one of the world's best bass players. But anyway, you get the point. Check out the Saturday and feel free to do requests. I'm working on some Robert Palmer. I don't know if it'll be ready. I'll practice it probably after this. It's coming along. But the Golden Earring, I think, is ready, and I'm not sure what else. And we're going to do another original. We're going to do Sun in the Rain, which we haven't done in a while. So we're going to do Red Flags, going to do Sun in the Rain. There's another one, Blameless, off the second record, which I want to do, but Karina's got to learn the harmonies. Actually, on that record, Karina didn't do the harmony on that song. It was Bridget Barkin. If you want to check out, Google Bridget Barkin. She's an actress and singer from New York, good friend of mine. Her father was Mark Barkin, who was you never heard of him probably, but he wrote a lot of songs that you've probably heard. There was Bruce Springsteen did a cover of, it was other bands, but the Bruce Springsteen version of, I think it was called Pretty Flamingo. He wrote that. He wrote, actually Bruce Springsteen, even when he died, he mentioned him. So that tells you this guy's, history of writing songs since the 60s. But that was her dad. Good, nice coolest guy. I you know, hung out with him a couple of times when we went to her shows and stuff. But it's just so sad that he died. He was in his 80s, but until like recently, he was just this energetic, artistic, creative dude. But anyway, go off on a tangent. But anyway, Bridget sang on that record, and she sang some cool stuff. But Karina for the live stream is going to learn that one, so we'll have like 4 originals. And I don't know, I keep going back to the records. I'm like, oh, this song's pretty cool. There's certain songs I just almost forgot about, and then listen, I'm like, you know, or Karina will be like, why don't you do this one? I'm like, really? That's a good one? She's like, no, that's the best one. You know, so it's like, who knows, you know. But you know, at some point, what I want to start doing is adding rotating the different originals live, or I could do them with the tracks. And then when we could do gigs again, I'll get Donna and Gary, Donna on bass, Gary on drums, Karina on vocals, and maybe I'll even bring in a percussionist, because there's percussion on most of those songs. Ron Wilson played percussion on a lot of the stuff. He played all the percussion on the first record, and then Jonathan Gleach played most of the percussion on the second record. But lately I've been working with Ron more. He plays drums in some of my other projects. But anyway, who knows? Maybe we'll even do a percussion. And I'd like to do something. We were supposed to do something at the St. Asbury Park in August, and then it was all canceled because of COVID. Aster Phoenix is another pretty well-known artist, original artist from North Jersey. She was doing a show like at the St., and we were going to like open up for her, and we were talking about that. Cool person. Check out her stuff. Very cool stuff. Check out Bridget Barkin. Check Aster Phoenix. Her stuff is hard to find only because it's hard. I don't even know the right spelling. It's hard. How do you spell Aster Phoenix? Not the anime character. I don't know. Maybe I'll play some of her stuff at some point on here. Actually, what I want to start doing is some of my friends are doing some really cool stuff, and doing similar stuff to this live cast, and I'd like to promote their stuff. A few acts, yeah, just to play some of their stuff, just so people get exposed to some other cool artists, which all artists should be doing. You should be promoting all your friends and promoting and building a community, so we could bring live music back, even if the live music is over the internet. Anyway, we need to bring it back, where there's the golden age of live music. I think people are dying for that stuff. You know, in the 70s, you could go to the CBGBs and see, you know, the Ramones and Television and the Dead Boys and Blondie and Talking Heads. You know, there's a real scene for original music that turned into the worldwide scene for original music. Talking Head, you know, and the CBGBs was a small place. It wasn't that much bigger than this freaking room, you know. But so what, you know? I mean, anyway, I would like to do that. And Arlene's Grocery. We always like playing Arlene's Grocery. The sound is good. It's a big room. The beers are good priced. The people are cool. The sound was always really pretty kick-ass in that room. Like, you could hear really good. And it's a big room. You could fit a couple hundred people in that room. And they do live video for you, so you could then post that stuff later. Mix it, post it later. A good live concert at Arlene's. So I definitely, that was always a place we'd like to play. And then maybe something in Brooklyn. I don't know. But that band's going to kick ass because we, you know, if you've seen the Red Flags video, and they're going to do video, and it's on YouTube and it's floating around Facebook, that was just like done in like 1 or 2 takes live. Just the 3 of us in a room. No rehearsal. That's how good those guys are. The Red Flags, I think we did it straight through from beginning to end, maybe twice, maybe 3 times. You know? And mainly because Donna was frustrated because she hadn't been playing it for a while because she had some medical issues, so she felt that she was rusty. So she's like, I want to do it again. I'm like, okay, fine. And then by the time we got to Red Flags, we were kind of well oiled, and I think we did that in 1 take. Maybe I think we did it 1 take, but then we did another take just to, you know, to be able to choose. And I think it took the 2nd take. But listening back, for a live thing, there's nothing that I think would get booed. Since we're talking, you know, there. On that Red Flags video, and people seem to dig it because it's got like 600-something thousand views on Facebook and like almost 3,000 comments. 2,900 something are positive. So people seem to dig it, and that was just I just needed something live to kind of get people introduce people to the band, and it seems to be working. But we want to do some more of that. I'd like to do live streams with Don at Gary in like a whole original set, maybe even live stream here, and then use that to promote some live gigs in New York and New Jersey. So that will be really cool because that band is gonna kick ass. If you've never seen Gary and Donna play live, they kick ass, and you see that from some of the videos with us. But once we start playing live, some of the stuff. Maybe we'll throw in some covers, some Prince, or we used to do Santana, the long version of Black Magic Woman, which starts out slow, but then you have that ending where it's dun 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 dun, Gypsy Queen, bum 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 bum, and Donna kicks ass on that. And I've had a couple of drummers, Gary, one of them, and a really good drummer makes that ending of that song, because there's all these fills and tom things, and maybe we'll bring that back and throw that in this set. But we have track for that. But I told Karina, I'm like, I don't want to do track anymore because it's just not. The great thing about that song is that ending with the live band and the drummer going that and then just jamming on the guitar for 5 minutes off of that and going off. That we used to end that all the time for like several years, and people just they just loved it. They're like, at the end, people are like, whoa, yeah, we just kicked it, and people would request it. So maybe we bring that back. And then, because that just is always a great closer, crowd pleaser. Anyway, I got stuff to do. I got to practice for Saturday. Practice. How do you get to the basement? It used to be, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. How do you get to Dave's basement? Practice. Hey, as long as we're making music and having fun and it's getting better, it's a win. See you guys Saturday 9:30, same bat time, same bat channel. Hasta la vista, baby. And where's the button? Okay.